Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another newsroom review here to discuss. In today's video, we'll look at some injury updates from our past couple of days, a couple of small pieces of news, and we've got some trade rumors involving the Flyers, the Red Wings, and a couple of other teams. We'll get to all the updates regarding these teams and the trade rumors coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get into the video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do it with all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below, don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. And if you haven't already, check out my community tabs on my YouTube page. I'm starting to post a little more regularly there. I've got a couple of interesting things, plus I also do regular updates when it comes to my channel schedule on every Sunday, so definitely don't forget to stay tuned for that and check it out. But in today's video, we've got another newsroom review here to discuss. Now, I would usually start off by talking about some signings from our past couple of days, but as we're recording this video, there have been no new signings, so we don't have any signings to talk about. So we're going to start off with a couple of injury updates. So we'll start out with Pierre Dubois out day at this point with a lower body injury, so it's a bad blow there for the Caps. Dubois is a really solid second line center. Brady Tkachuk is out at least a month with a wrist injury, so it's a bad blow there for the Senators, as Tkachuk is a big piece of that team. So hopefully it won't be longer than a month, but he's going to be out at least a month with the wrist injury. Cam York will be activated soon and could even get back in game action later today against the Winnipeg Jets, as there's some talk it could be activated from IR with his lower body injury. He's missed the entire season up to this point, so that'll be a big boost there for Philadelphia's defense. Zach Benson returned to game action on Wednesday after suffering an injury when he took a puck to the face in the preseason, I think it was, or just before the season started. So good to see that Benson's now back for the Buffalo Sabres. Jacob Slavin won't go on the Carolina Hurricanes' upcoming road trip due to a lower body injury. He's going to get more tests done, and we'll see how severe that injury is for Jacob Slavin. That's a bad blow there for the Canes. Matthias Janmark and Alec Regula could be back from their respective injuries as early as this weekend, so very interesting out there. That could be a really big boost there. Regula's missed the past couple of games for Edmonton, while Janmark's missed the entirety of the season so far due to, I think, an undisclosed injury. So very interesting out there. Max Crozier left Tuesday's game for the Bolts with undisclosed injury and didn't return. I think his status for tonight's game for Tampa is unknown, but hopefully he's not going to be out for an over long period of time. Aiden Hill left Tuesday's game as well with a lower body injury and didn't return. Same sort of thing. I don't know his status for his upcoming game against the Boston Bruins later tonight, but hopefully it's not too severe. Zach McEwen was placed on injury reserve with undisclosed injury and is out indefinitely, so it's a bad blow there for the Devils. They call out McEwen when I think Evgeny Dodonov went down, and now McEwen's out too, so it's a bad blow there for the New Jersey Devils. Lucas Raymond is out day with upper body injury and missed yesterday's game for the Detroit Red Wings. That's a bad blow there. Raymond's easily the Red Wings' best forward, so see him be out for any length of period of time is a bad blow there for Detroit, but at least they got the win yesterday. Matthias Samuelsson missed Wednesday's game due to an undisclosed injury, so Samuelson's back being injured for the Buffalo Sabres. It doesn't sound like it's going to be an overly long injury, but once again, Samuelsson, who's had trouble with injuries over the past couple of years, is now back injured, so bad stuff there for Buffalo. Nick Foligno missed Wednesday's game due to a leave of absence. He has some things to take care of with his daughter, so he's going to be away from the team for the next little bit, and he missed yesterday's game. So hopefully everything that's with him is all right, and hopefully he doesn't spend too much time away from the team, but he is on a leave of absence right now. Miles Wood is out at least 1 week with an eye injury, so it's a bad blow there for the Blue Jackets, as Wood's a really solid bottom six forward. Dmitry Kulikov was announced to be out 5 months after shoulder surgery. There's a bad blow there. It's another long-term injury for the Florida Panthers on their third pair of the defense. Now they're going to be without Tkachuk until December, Kulikov until March or April, and Barkov until April, May, or June. So bad blows there for the Florida Panthers. Markstrom will be out at least a couple of weeks after sustaining a lower body injury, so it's a bad blow there for the Devils. Losing Markstrom, who's their starter for any length of period of time, is a bad blow, so he's at least going to miss a week or two, if not a little bit longer. Derek Forbort is out with an undisclosed injury and was placed on injury reserve by the Canucks, so hopefully Forbort won't be out for an over long period of time, but he'll probably at least miss the next couple of games. John Klingberg and Timothy Liljegren are out day at this point in time, and are questionable for San Jose's next game on Friday, so hopefully they're not going to be out for an over long period of time. Klingberg and Liljegren are solid defensemen, guys who can play second or third per minute, so it wouldn't be overly good to see both those guys be able to do the injuries. And then Dalen Kufler was activated off of a season opening injury reserve and sent to the minors by the New York Islanders. So very interesting note there. Kufler was never going to get any NHL minutes, so he's sent back to the minors. So very interesting note there. Lots of very interesting injury updates, including around some bigger names such as Markstrom, Kulikov, Foligno, Raymond, McEwen, Hill, Janmark, Slavin, Friedman, Benson, York, and Tkachuk. So very interesting out there. Next, going over to some recalls, some reassignments, and the waiver update. So when it comes to some reassignments, Hunter Haight, who started the season with the Minnesota Wild, gone to a couple of games, has been sent to the minors by Minnesota. Braden Coots, who started the season surprisingly with the Vancouver Canucks, has also been reassigned, except he's been reassigned to the junior team. Eric Portillo, after being called up on an emergency basis, has also been sent down to the minors. So very good stuff there. He's going back to the minors. And Emil Andrea, who I think spent like 1 or 2 days up with the Philadelphia Flyers, has officially gone back down to the AHL. So very interesting out there. Well, we saw Ben Jones be recalled by the Minnesota Wild, Max Sasson be recalled by the Vancouver Canucks, Scott Morrow be recalled by the New York Rangers, and Nico Dawes be recalled by the New Jersey Devils. So I mean, Haight and Jones were just a swap. I think they wanted to get Haight some more AHL time, have him build up his game, so they sent him down to the minors instead of having him be like a healthy scratch, and they call up Ben Jones, who's more suitable to be like a solid 13-14 forward on the NHL roster. The Canucks obviously saw that Coots wasn't exactly ready for NHL time, and plus I think it's best in his development routes for him to go back to juniors. So he goes back to juniors. He's going to probably have another solid dominant junior season, and very likely chance he makes the team out training camp next year again and will be a solid third line center going forward. But because they sent him down, they have the ability to call up Max Sasson, who had a pretty solid start to the AHL season and also had a really solid finish to last year's season too, so they just swapped those guys. Morrow was called up because of some injuries to their blue line. I know Carson Soucy recently got injured, so they wanted to have some more added defensive depth. So good move by the Rangers. We just talked about how Jacob Markstrom was injured, so Nico Dawes was called up to basically sort of help replace the injury of Jacob Markstrom. He's probably going to back up Allen over the next couple of weeks, so very interesting note there. Well, for the Kings, due to a trade they made earlier in the day, there was no longer a need for Portillo at the NHL roster, so he was sent back down, and the Flyers sent Andrea back down, so it wasn't really a long stint for Andrea at the NHL level, so very interesting note there. But we saw Donovan Sebrango, Igor Afanaseyev, and recently Vincent Iorio on waivers. Now, Sebrango and Afanaseyev were placed on waivers on Tuesday, and one of them did clear yesterday, and that was Afanaseyev, but Sebrango was claimed off of waivers by the Florida Panthers. So after a solid start to his NHL career with the Ottawa Senators and making the team, getting to a couple of NHL games, he wound up being claimed off the waiver wire by the Florida Panthers, who, as one time we just talked about, Kulikov's injured. They need someone to fill in a third pair role, so Sebrango can definitely do that. Afanaseyev was just coming off of injury reserve, so I don't think it's too much of a surprise he wound up clearing. And the case of Vincent Iorio, he's a younger defenseman. I could see a couple of teams who need maybe like a 6'7" defenseman, maybe try and claim him, but I also wouldn't be one bit surprised if he did wind up clearing, so we'll have to wait and see on that. But those are all the waiver updates from our past couple of days. And lastly here, going over to a couple of small, interesting pieces of news. First, the Montreal Canadiens have extended both President of Hockey Ops Jeff Gordon as well as GM Kent Hughes to new extensions. I don't know the details, I don't know the length, I don't know the money value, I don't know all those details, but there was a couple of recent reports that came out, I think a couple of days ago, saying that both these guys have been signed to extensions, so do not expect Hughes and Gordon to have to be worrying about a contract extension in Montreal anytime in the near future, so they're both going to stay. According to Elliot Friedman, he says that his sources said that at the start of the negotiations, Kempe and the Kings were sort of discussing a deal between the $9 and $10 million range. But he says that after some of the extensions that happened, Eichel, Kaprizov, Connor, he says that Kempe's contract could be $10+ million at this point. We've heard about that from a whole bunch of different teams. I know there was a report, I think, from Chris Johnston or David Pagnotta, or one of the big insiders that said that Kempe was using William Nylander's contract as sort of like a same value for him. So like it seems like at this point, Kempe and the Kings were sort of starting on a $9 to $10 million AAV deal on a new extension, and now it seems like they're in the 10 to 11, maybe even $11+ million range, and that's sort of echoed here by Elliot Friedman. So definitely we'll have to keep our tabs on the Kempe situation, but don't expect it to be anything less than $10 million at least on a new deal for Adrian Kempe. Then going over to Tyler Mott, just like Brandon Smith and Brett Liaison, as we mentioned in our last video, Tyler Mott has signed an AHL PTO. He signed it with the Florida Panthers AHL affiliate. So once again, it's not even an AHL contract, it's just an AHL PTO. We shall see how he does on his PTO in the AHL, but very interesting note there that Mott has also signed an AHL PTO, just like Brendan Smith and Brett Liaison, so very interesting note there. And lastly, we saw a trade. This was a very small trade, so I didn't want to do it in our separate video, but Phoenix Copley, who was claimed off of waivers just a couple of days before the start of the season by the Tampa Bay Lightning from the LA Kings, has been dealt by the Tampa Bay Lightning back to the LA Kings for future consideration. So it's a very weird way to sort of wrap up this. So Copley was sort of going to be a third string for the LA Kings this start of the year. He was mostly a third stringer last year, so he was placed on waivers, trying to sneak him down on the waiver wire. Wasn't able to do so. He was claimed by Tampa. Tampa had some concerns with Vasilevsky and if he was going to be healthy to start a season. But he's been able to start a season, so there's no really need for Copley being on the roster as a third stringer. So I wound up trading Copley back to the LA Kings. Now, I think the Kings had some problems with their goalies. I'm not sure if Forsberg or Kempe sustained an injury, but there was a reason why Elgar Portillo was recalled on an emergency basis. So I think Copley will probably stay at the NHL level for a time being. But very interesting out there to see how it's wrapped up. As just about a week and a half ago, he was claimed off of waivers by Tampa, and now he's getting traded back to LA. So very interesting out there. And Tampa doesn't get anything in return. It's basically just future considerations. So very interesting out there. Those are all the news updates from the past couple of days. And lastly, here going over to a couple of trade rumors. So we got 3 trade rumors here to talk about. Very interesting trade rumors. So we're going to start off with David Pagnotta. He was talking about the Detroit Red Wings recently, and he says that he thinks there's a very likely chance that 2 Red Wing defensemen are starting to become expendable in the Detroit Red Wings organization. Now, he says that the Red Wings have had some really solid showings from some of their defensemen. Now, they have currently younger guys like Axel Sandin Pellikka or ASP. You also have guys like Johansson and Edmondson who started coming to their own. Sider's looking really good. Sherrod's not done overly bad playing on the line with Sider, and they've had a couple of other solid players starting to step up in the Red Wings organization. So he says with that in mind, he thinks that pending UFAs Travis Hamonic and Eric Gustafsson could wind up becoming trade chips for the Detroit Red Wings. Now, Gustafsson's a very interesting one. He was recently placed on waivers. No one claimed him. He's making $2 million, but I think if the Red Wings were to at least retain a little bit of money, or even if there were some teams out there who ran into some major injuries on the blue line, I think there'll be some teams out there who would like to add Gustafsson. Now, he's, I think, got 1 year left, a $2 million cap hit. He's more of a 6'7" defenseman at this point in his career, but he has shown in the past he has had offensive flashes before, especially I think in Chicago Blackhawks organization. Now, I know he did just clear waivers, but I think with the fact that he could be a guy who people could send back down to the minors, I think some teams who do have a little bit of cap space who need some more defensive help, I think he could be a solid asset for some of those other teams. And I think for the Red Wings, even if they just get like a 4th or 5th round pick back for him, at least they're getting something back for a pending UFA who's not getting a whole bunch of playing time. Same thing with Hamonic. Like, Hamonic started the season with the Red Wings, didn't look overly good. He's been a little bit of a healthy scratch over the past couple of games. It sort of seems like he's sort of falling out of favor in Detroit as well, just like he did with Ottawa last year. So he's got 1 year left, $1 million. I could see a couple of teams try and add him just for like some defensive insurance. So like, I don't think these are going to be trades that are going to get Detroit like a 2nd round pick, a 1st round pick, a top level prospect. I don't think that's going to happen. But if they were to trade them, I think they would go to teams who need some defensive upgrades and some defensive help. And I think Detroit could get like a 4th or 5th round pick in return. So we should wait and see on that. But Detroit, at least at the time being, could be considering moving guys like Gustafsson or Hamonic, as they do have a plethora of blue liners on this current team. So we should wait and see on that. Next, going over to Frank Seravalli, he was talking about Hendrix Lapierre. Now, after having a couple of games where past a little while, Lapierre has not done overly good. There was a lot of hype going into the start of the season. They was going to be the team's 3rd line center and do really good. But according to the recent stats from after the first 4 games for Washington, he's played the least amount of ice time, I think, out of all of the Washington Capitals forwards on per game basis. And it doesn't look like he's fitting in overly well. So Seravalli has heard that Lapierre is a guy who could wind up eventually becoming a trade chip for the Washington Capitals. Now, Lapierre was a former 1st round pick. I think he was like taken in the mid to late 20s a couple of years back. I think in the 2021 or 2022 draft. I might have been a little bit wrong on that, but it was a recent 1st round pick from a couple of years ago. He had some really solid hype to be eventually a solid like top 6 forward, 2nd line center, something like that. Really hasn't worked out a whole bunch. Hasn't really even gone to a consistent NHL role. So like, could the Caps try and move him? I think if they were to move him just by himself, they'd be able to get like maybe a 3rd round pick or a decent prospect or someone who's in the same sort of boat, like a younger player who's not having a good stint with his current team. But I could see them maybe try and package him in a bigger deal, maybe later on to the season, try and get some sort of a massive upgrade. I still think Lapierre has the potential to be a solid like middle 6th forward, guy who can play on the center, maybe even play on the wing, but it just seems like the fit with Washington's not there at this point, and very likely chance that at some point he will get traded. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But Frank Seravalli says to watch out for Hendrix Lapierre, so he could be a name who comes up later on into the season, and it could be a guy who the Washington Capitals try and trade. So we should wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to David Pagnotta, he says that teams are expected to check in on the Philadelphia Flyers regarding Owen Tippett later on into the season. Now, Tippett is a really solid player. I think he had like 20 plus goals last year. He's a guy who I think has a ceiling of a 30 goal scorer and putting up like 50 to 60, maybe pushing 70 points. He's a really solid player. He was a former, I think, top 15 pick or maybe even top 10 pick in the 2017 draft. Like, he was a really high pick in the 2017 draft by the Florida Panthers, who traded him to Philadelphia. in the Claude Giroux deal a couple of years ago. He's been able to carve himself a pretty good role in the top 6 for the Philadelphia Flyers, and it's on a longer-term contract. I think he signed for like 5 or 6 more seasons at $6.25 million AAV. So that's why a lot of teams could be checking in on him. He's cost-controlled. He's not on a bad contract. He signed for a longer-term period of time, and he's a guy who has potential to be a really solid goal scorer and point scorer for a lot of NHL teams. Now, I'm not sure if Philadelphia will want to part ways with him because he's a really solid top 6 forward, guy who's still currently playing in their top 6. But one thing we have talked about with Philadelphia over the past couple of weeks is they're looking for a top 4 defenseman, whether that's someone who can play on the left side, right side, puck-moving guy, more of a defensive-minded guy. They don't have a whole bunch of really solid elite-level defensemen. Like, they have York, they have Sanheim, to some extent Ristolainen, to some extent Drysdale, but they don't have a whole bunch of really lethal defensive weapons, and they don't have a whole bunch of guys coming up in their system either, not when it's compared to their forward group. So with all of that in mind, we could see Philadelphia maybe make Tippett expendable if it was able to get them a top 4 young upgrade. I think that's a possibility. Now, I'm not sure what sort of teams could try and target him at this point. Like, teams who could use the top 6 forward right now would be a team like Vancouver. Buffalo could use some sort of a swap. We know they've been linked to Byram recently. Could they try and land Tippett? And there's probably a couple other guys too besides just Buffalo, Vancouver. I could see Utah try and make some sort of a forward upgrade. We've talked about that before. We mostly mentioned Pavel Zacha, but I could see him trying to have some interest in Tippett. And there's probably a couple of younger teams who would love to add a guy who's cost control like Tippett, and maybe even some of the teams who are more playoff bound this year who would love to probably add a guy like Tippett. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But keep your eye on Owen Tippett. Very likely chance that the Flyers at least consider the possibility of a trade. And well, I'm not sure it's a guarantee that's going to happen. There will be teams out there who try and pry him out of Philadelphia this upcoming offseason. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But that's what we're talking for today. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Does Owen Tippett get dealt by the Philadelphia Flyers? Do the Red Wings move Gustafsson and Hamnick in the very near future? And could Hendrix Lapierre be dealt in some sort of trade or potentially a bigger package by the Washington Capitals? Definitely thoughts on all of that, plus all the news updates and the injury updates down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video. If you're looking to subscribe below, thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do it without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming out in the very near future. I also have a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. It will inside the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.